start again from Siv Beis, just to clarify a few pratim. As I said, that's what this part of the Maimer that from Perikid Aleph, in order for there to be the Tzachna Muhammad, you menatzeach the Managid. So the Indian of being menatzeach the Managid, that's negea be pnimius ve'atzmius hamelech, and for that, that's tifer from alle andere inyanim. And for that, he's mevazviz is called itzreisav. The ikar was retzach is that the melech is mevazviz is called itzreisav for the sake of the nitzuach hamucham. So the shayla is, what does it mean in the nimshol? What's the darga of eitzer? So what's the question in the mashal? The mashal eitzer are azal inyanim which are inyanim mechusim. In certain things that the melech has, the certain eitzers that he has, so they're there for the sake of use. So that shows that they're not a precious Indian that the tarikat is within this Indian itself. So you don't use it for something else. You don't use it as an emtsai for something else. Something they use. The melech has eiches that he buys with the tzrachim of the Medina. That means that the tzrachim of the Medina are more important than this neches that he has. And he uses this neches as an emtsai for the tzrachim Medina. Then the evan should be kasser melech. So that's not there. That's a tayr zach in itself. That's a precious thing that the melech doesn't use it for the sake of something else. He's not going to use his keser, his evan should be kasser melech in order to buy nechasim, because this is a precious thing. But Aval became nishta zatayr zach. What's the purpose of the evan should be kasser melech in order for the yekeram for the heid v'hadar malchus to be nizgala, in order for people to be impressed by the gadlus melech. Melech v'yafi techasei neinach. So that itself shows that it's used. If it's used for a certain matara, that means that it's not the ultimate. That means that it's not azat tayr zach. It's tired, but the very fact that it's a zazach, which is used in order to express the yeker amalchus, in order to express adam mechusay to the am, so it's not the ultimate tired zach. In the eitzes which are mechusim, you don't show them. They're not there for any external purpose. They're the most precious things, and therefore it's not used for anything. They're zeizar natayr zach. So what does it mean in the nimshol? That there's none of the lakus which are not l'shem gilei lakus, they're not l'shem to bring out God's Hashem to azulas. They're in yonim yikarim mitzadas, and that's the whole arichas in so the eitzer is in yonim ne'elamim. In yonim lakus sharanim shalamayla megilei. When order so haben a tifer avana, and what's the yoker of the was b'shtete tayirkeit in the yonim hane'elamim. So the Inyanim Aglim also have a certain Yeker. They're also Inyanim Nefloi Ma'id, and they're also not Stam Inyanim, which are called Inyanim in Tzoi B'Shvil Azulas. They're Inyanim Yikardim, and they're not a Tzerech HaElemis. There's also in the Lukus is higher than Elemis, but Ava Begin, within that itself, when you understand the Yeker of the Inyanim Hagluyim, so does come and have a Tifra Verstand in the Yeker of the Inyanim HaNe'elam. So that's the, so it was Mevar till now. So what's the Rebbe start off? Okay, we'll start again in Sivbeis inside. Just want to so much of Amir he needs in yonim elo there in sof la maila adin kesel mata adin tachlis and vies madrigas paid in sof baruch v'yeshefish god lebenem. So what's the nukot till now? The inner lamata adin tachlis is the fact that Eidin sof is misgala mispashid biz lamata mata. So the fact that Eidin sof is made and misgala in the lowest in all elamis till the lowest madrigas. So that's the inner agili that is misgala in elamis. What's the maila adin kes? Fakert that the inner of is almosay that the air is not misgala. And the Indian at Simpson, the fact that the Eibishter is the Keach Hagvol, the Keach L'halim B'lahaster, that the Ein Sof of a Lukus shouldn't be Nizgal in Elamis, that is the Indian of L'mayla Ma'ala Adiketz. There's on Ashir in the Indian at Simpson, the Keach Hagvol, L'halim Esair, there's also Blik Vol in Yonim, the Indian at Simpson. That's what the Be'ikr was the Rebbe Geret also last year in Ram Tovshin Chafei. So here the Frierdiker Rebbe says that the two in Yonim of Eidin Sof, the Ma'ala Adiketz Ma'ala Adiketz is two Madrigas in the Eid itself. It means, according to what's explained till now, it's the same Indian. We're talking about Eid. Whatever the Eid is Eidin Sof. The shayla is whether it's begili in Elamis or not. Whether this Indian is bezgalas in the Zulas or not bezgili in the Zulas. Doretman not legabi whether it's bezgala in the Zulas or not. Two inyanim in the air itself. The air biyachas la'atzmin, there's two inyanim in the air. Good, that's one thing. That's the first thing that was. Yinim is adat in this bar, apirish in Salmala, and kesam adat in tachlis, kfishu kipshut. It's also not stam as kipshut means pshat in Zayar, pshat in Kabbalah. Means every chilik in Torah has the four chalakim, so derech pshat benister the Torah. That's also this Ribe Yodim Neflan. If you get explains Lamatam Adad in Tachlis, 2.5 prakim which are not in Neflan Lamatam in Tachlis, but it's all according to the Derech Hapshat, so to speak, in the Torah. She'er in Sof El Lamayla V'Nimshach Lamatam means that the air is bis almos. That means it's contained within itself. The air is nichol on the etzem and is not meir b'chutz. That's the kava helim. And then there's Nimshach Lamata, the kava gili that is meir and mispashet in elamis. Now here, this word that they add here, she'ali l'mayla v'hamshach l'mata beis mekemis nefradim, that is what the Lashon the Rebbe wrote in the Rashi Prakim. Yeah, I mentioned this last time. In the Maimer itself, the Lashon of the Maimer, we went through this last time. Just want to just bring out this point because it's but the Lashon that the Rebbe said in the Maimer, there's no status. I'm just trying to bring out this nuance. But the Rebbe says there that Isser is a Mazra Naim Inyan, das Beis Madreges and Ehrens of Atzmi. Nicht wie man gerät früher. That it's Nimshach L'mayla and Yered L'mata, and sagt, it's an Ehrens of wie is. In the air, the way the air is, not whether he's mispashed in the Zulas or not. In the air, the way the air is, there's two in Yonim. L'mayla and Kes L'mata Adin Tachlis. And the Rashi Prakim, the Rebbe wrote that Mechadish, Loi L'mata L'mayla Beis Mekemis Nefradim, Kim B'mokim Echad. Means that Gasha, that according to the beer till now, so the Indian of L'mayla and Kes L'mata Adin Tachlis is Beis Mekemis Nefradim. Two Mekemis. Mekemis Nefradim, the Lashon is. And here's Mesiv Mechadish, the Beis Mekemis L'mayla and Kes L'mata Adin Tachlis, Yesh Negam B'mokim Echad. So there's what's the hadgosh in this word that according to what's inspired till now, the union of Hel and the Gilui is in two mekemis nefradim. I mean, we'll understand, we'll appreciate what the hadgosh over here is, that it's in two separate mekemis. The pashtas that I've been saying, the union hagilui is it's two separate. The Helam and the Gilui are in two separate madregas, in two separate you say mekemis. You have elements where there lukus Meir, or you have that element where there lukus bezgalas, and you have the nekuda vis amos, where lukus is not Meir. So sveva zundere mekemis, sveva zundere inyan. Mashaken here within the air itself, which air itself is one air, it's ein air, and there gufa you have two inyan. We'll see what that gush is, that it's in two separate mekemis. What's nitaisa with this word, that according to the beer till now, it's the inyan of lamayla lamata and two mekemis nefradim. But I'm just talking about them. That's one thing. It says, "Va'ata mesim machadish shebeizin none of the ma'ila adin kesel mata adin tachlis yeshnem gam b'mokim echad erin sof fishu ba'atzmi." And the Frierdiker Rebbe's lashon is that in erin sof atzmi him beis madreges. Yeah, that's the him beis madreges by erin sof baruch. And not only is two madreges, v'lo edel sheish hefresh gadol b'neim. So was will the Frierdiker madgesh sein with them that it's two madreges, not separate madreges, because it's all on the same air. We're not dealing with two madreges could mean two eris. We're not saying that erin sof includes within itself two eris. We're saying in the same air, in the same Indian, there's two madregas. Let's see what the pshat in that is. And these two madregas is hefresh gadol b'neim. There's a chiluk between them. It's nicht the selber Indian. Was will is bringing with them? So we say move on. She'ena kavana Indian hayichelis. She be cholte leer de lis galis. She be cholte shalei leer de lis galis. Ki Indian hayichelis Indian echad sheish bebeis tenus. How do you understand the pashas? The musik of yichelis. The Rebbe says weiter that amidas in hayichelis is an atzmus. We'll see that. But what's the pashas at barm of yichelis? I mentioned last time just to touch it up the pashtas. That there's a difference in the Frierdiker of Zavair by Riches and there's a Maimer Siminik Chesam, there's other Maimerim, that you say that someone is a Balkayach means that the fact that he has the ability to do Kach V'Kach, person has the ability to write because he has the Kayach HaKsiv B'yad. Not that the Nefesh, not that the person, he could. Why could he? Because he has a Kayach, he has an aspect within himself, which is a Makir, has the ability to do Kach V'Kach. Yechelis means not that he has the kayach to do this and this prat. He has the mocker of Gila and the mocker of Helim. He's a yachal. Means the nefesh is mufshit, let's say, from seichel and from midis. Say nefesh neise keiches. The nefesh is mufshit from seichel and midis. He's not mitzui. He's pashat b'talas apshitis. Say, but the nefesh, the etzem, he's a yachal. What does it mean? He's a yachal. For what can I raise from seichel and midis? Let's say because he's not defined. So you have one way you say the reason why the teitzah could come from the mocker because the mocker contains within himself this element. He has the ability to do this. So it's not that he's a yachal, not that the etzem, the mocker, he's a yachal. He's nishken yachal. He's what he is. He has the ability for this and this prat. He has a keichatnuah. Yechelis means that you say that he could. So erken. For what is erken? Because he's not defined. Because he's not defined, can out sein from him. Because he's not mugder, therefore anything can come from him. Not because say that the dogma chassidus you say that on a gavan lovin you're able to color any color. Why? Not because the gavan lovin contains within himself a shaykhis to red and a shaykhis to blue. Since he has no tzir, so nothing is like nothing. He doesn't negate anything. He's not defined. That's Yechelis Beifin Klali were saying that the etzem is a yachal. Er is a yachal. Why is he a yachal? Not because he has the keiches of those in yanim, because he's not mugder. So when you say Yecheles, so we're saying that the Makir, the Baal Hay, the Yachol, there is no, according you say, let's say there's two Madregas, whatever the two Madregas are. Let's say two Madregas are the Eira Blikvol and Eira Gvol. We'll see the Hemshech Adar Siv Gimel, what it means the two Madregas here in Eir itself. Well, Lamer Zagan is that in the Eir contains the air which is not Mugbal and air which is Mugbal. In Yecheles, there is no Eir Blikvol and Eir Gvol. There's no Blikvol and there's no Gvol. The Yecheles is mufshit from the Tziyurim of Blikvol and Gvol. So for us, mitzad em ken zayin blikvol and gvol, because he's not defined. Since he's not defined, so he could be side this way and side that way. So then then it's not two inyanim. Two madregas means that there is an aspect that relates to this inyan. There's an aspect that relates to that inyan. In Yecheles, there's no this inyan, there's no that inyan. He's yachol that inyan. Not that he contains these inyanim. Ken, but sister Ken. He doesn't have the two madregas. Because he's not defined, therefore can out zayin for him. So in Yecheles, it's not two, you can't say two madregas. There's none of these tziyurim because his mufshit can al zayin. So two madregas can come in our zayin. If you have an which is blikvul and an which is gvul, you can say that there's two madregas. That's zwei inyan. In Yecheles, there is no of these two inyan. You say because it's not mugdir, no ela can al zayin. So that's not a gather of two madregas. It says even if you're going to want to say that there is a saying, afilu nitchak v'leimer. So that's the first. Yef shaleimer shem beis madregas. So when the Friediger Rebbe says that Erin Sof hat sich zwei Inyanim, redt sich nicht der Darge wie Cheles. In Erin Sof Schliffen Hatzins and there's Kama Darges. So when he says Erin Sof is Lamaila and Lamata, he is not dealing with the higher Madrega of Eir, which is Pchinas HaYechele Sheber. He's dealing with already a tzir of an Eir. Erin Sof, not that he's Yochel HaHoyer. Not that Yochel HaHoyer means he's beyond the definition of Eir. He's not Eir. There's the Etzem which is beyond Eir. Ken out, ken Meir sein, es ken sein es ken sein Nishter, for was ken sein ken sein Nishter. It's nicht stuck in It means he's higher than the definition of whatever definition of is. But because he's not defined, ken sein and ken sein Nishter. So mitzad dat madrig, imidos ken sein verschiedene Sachen, and in Yonim Afachim, but there's no yachas to the Yonim which come from it. In that madrig, there's not tefillas smakim to this tzir or that tzir. It's his pshitas. So there's ein Indian. So it's not shaykh to say two madrigas. So afilum nitchik goleimar shebeis madrigas hainu beis tnuas. So, I mean, not verstehen, but Pasha say Yecheles, and it says, you say Yecheles in the regular case, even if you say that he's mufshit from the Tzir Pratim, but Ava became the fact that in Vos, there is a certain, and the regular Musik of Yecheles, there's a certain Yachas, there's a certain Tfisas Makim to the Inyanim that he's Yachal. I don't know if it's Mamish Negeh here, but the Elmos of Shchavav get me right in the Legani, you go into every single prat, so I'm saying this. But it's not Mamish Negeh, but in Be'efin Klali, when you speak about Yecheles, so there you say, on one hand you say that the reason why he could have Lahoyer and Shalai Lahoyer is because he's not defined. That means that he doesn't relate to Gilui and relate to Helim. His Maile Bashteknish that he's a dover which contains within himself the ability to Yizgalis and the ability to Lahalim. There's Mufshid therefore. That's the word Yecheles. But since he's not defined, so therefore it can be in any mode. But Ava became the fact that he's not defined is expressed in the Nukoda that he contains within himself the ability as von em ken sein sai and sai helen. Mit was bringt Chares his head ragdor? He said the nefesh is next to Chares. So the etzem nefesh is not there's no mocker yet for chachma and bina and seichel amidus. The nefesh is mufshit, but mitzat pshitusay, so you can't define him that he has to be dafke in a certain kav. He can be so there could be anything. It could be seichel amidus. So on one hand you say in the mitzat dinin of Yecheles there's not tfisas makim to the tzir of seichel amidus. Because we're dealing with Tzicheles. But with Sheni, how is it expressed the fact that he's not defined? That there could be Chachma, there could be Seichel, there could be Midas. So there could be some type of Yachas to the Tnuas, even though there is no Tnuas yet. Mitzad the Darg of Yecheles, there is no two Eiris. That there's no two Eiris. There's no two Madrigas. There's him. But the fact that his Pshitas, the fact that his head Ragdor is expressed that there could be anything, so there, you could say, that there's two Tnuas there. It means it's not the pshit is the way it is ba'atzmei, that there's no relation at all to Tziyurim which come from him or to Inyanim which come from him. There is safkas of these Inyanim expressed, the fact that it could be Gilan, it could be Helim, expresses his head Ragdor. So there is somewhat of a Tizas Makim to the Inyanim of Gilan Helim. As if I can say, but the Rebbe says, even if you're going to be doichag and to say that there's shaykhs to say some yachas to tnuas, mitzad the darg of Yecheles, but if you Rebbe adds yesh hefresh gadol b'neim, was will is being the word that the hefresh gadol b'neim, you can't say in Yecheles is hefresh gadol. Mitzad Yecheles that's one inyan, he's not mugdar. So what's the nikud of air and what's the nikud of helm? The same inyan, the fact that he's not mugdar. The inyan of the fact that he can be mayor is not a separate inyan, it's not mufresh from the fact that he can be behelim. The word is that he's not mugdar. He's not mugdar. Ken zayin das and ken zayin yens. Even if you're going to say that the fact that it could be all these pratim expresses heder agdara, but sof kol sof, there's no chilik between the helim and the gil. Because we're dealing with an alien which is mufshit from the tziyurim of gili ve'elim. And mitzad this heder agdara can all zayn. The meile, so the if shalema sheshepesh gadol b'nim. Shari amitis hayicheles si ba'efin sheyachol kach v'yachol sheyachol kav v'yachol ifan hafchi b'shav. V'lei hefresh klal. We'll see this is another time. Amitis hayicheles in bald zen. The deal. Korcha tzarech lema shemedur madrega shalmatim inin hayicheles. So we'll see. We'll have more clarification in this part also in the Hamshich and the Hamshich Advarim. The fact that Yechelis is mufshet legamri from Shaykhas to say a Yachas to Amidas Yechelis is even that they're both b'shavet. It's mashma. You can have a dark in Yechelis where they're not both b'shavet. Amidas Yechelis where they're both b'shavet. Okay, in the Zendas, the Hamshich. Omnam l'chura any move on. Ich shaykh lever ma'ilo ulamata mata be'erdin so. So with the chura, so then meredach tzvei madreges and tzvei madreges. When there's, let's say, Rebbe's going to touch differently the two madreges. Not well. I'm just saying for the sake of Gringer that there's era bligvo and era gvul. Two madreges in there. But l'chura, and what are we saying? There are two madreges and they're two separate inyanim. There's a air which mitzuyer bebligvo, let's say, and there's a air which is mitzuyer begvul. Nachamol in Yecheles there is no bligvo and there's no gvul. In Yecheles he's mufshit from both of these things. Es can alt sein, not because he's an Indian of Helam and an Indian of Gili, because he's not defined. The Mele can alt sein. Here we're saying that to bring out that we're dealing with a darg of air. There's already, so to speak, a tzir of two madregas. So that's a stirrer to the musik of Ein Sof. That's the stirrer to the air is Ein Sof. The air is Ein Sof means that he's pasha b'talas apshitas, that he has no definition. So if he has no definition, we come in dirt and zog in zwei madregas, and that each madrega is a bazunder Indian. Hefresh gadol b'neim. And I'm saying the Rebbe is asking it as a shayla, l'chora is tir in Sof, but l'chora this line itself needs to be understood. I'm saying the Rebbe's lashon in the Rashi Pragin that we're saying that within one air, we're not saying that there's two airs. Ein air, which is in Sof, and their air for Ansveinyan. So if it's two madregas, so it's not the same air. If it's two madregas means that there's an air in a za'ifin and an air in a tzveita ifin. So then it's not the same air. You're saying it's the same air, but this air, you say it's, so to speak, murka from two things. So what was made? So then it's murka. If it's murka, if it's tzir, so it's not Ein Sof. That's the shayla. Says, hine bepirish Ein, what you can teach that Ein Sof means not ultimate Ein Sof. The Rebbe means hine bepirish Ein Sof. Vara ben azon kam came. The Rebbe explains the kam came is that the pshat of Ein Sof doesn't mean. Aderech gets a Eir Hashemesh. Eir Hashem doesn't mean that the air is shemesh. It means the air which extends the emanation from the sun. I don't know how you touch air, but his pashtas Hashemesh. So air Hashemesh. Mashegem Mishas Zok Eir Ein Sof. So that touch that Eir Ein Sof means air shel Ein Sof. That the Ein Sof is the etzem, atzmos is Ein Sof, and the Eir Ein Sof, the lashon is Eir Ein Sof means an air the pashtas of the etzem, the pashtas of Ein Sof. Avdem Zok Al Rebbe doesn't need their touch. But the touch of Eir Ein Sof means that the air itself is Ein Sof. Ki im air shehu atzme Ein Sof. Yeah, last year, I think also in the beginning of the Chafei, but remember earlier that the Chrechem that Chassidus brings the rayis that when Zer steht Eir Ein Sof meant is the air guf as Ein Sof, and not that Ein Sof is kaya led. So now, what does it mean when you say the air is atzme is Ein Sof? The hainu Ein Sof amiti, emes Ein Sof, she'en le'tchila ve'en le'seif v'chulu. V'im kein le'shayach b'chiluk darges namay lo matam. Saying the ein le'seif, the ein le'chila, I'm understanding exactly what the kavanah here, ein le'tchila. But ein seif means that it's pasha b'tavas apshitis. It has no tzir. There's no arkava. It's an air which has no definition. That's Ein Sof. There's no hagdara what the tzir of the seir is. If there's no definition to the seir, v'yishayach hazag mitzvei madrigas. Within this iniguf two madrigas. Yeah, the Rebbe adds the lashon that the air is ein le'tchila. There's when you say the word ein le'tchila in the air, there's a couple of ifanim. But there's the simple ifin is air ein le'tchila, not that the air has no, is two tach ein le'tchila. Ein le'tchila means that it has no mocker. Its mitzias stems from its own mohos. That you could only say in atzmos. The Eibishter is mitzios, the fact that it exists is nevea mitzat his atzmius. There's a zazach which exists. Only the etzim is mitzios in atzmos, and is mechoyev mitzias. The fact that he exists is nevea, it's nevea mitzat his mohos. Mashiach air, any other Indian outside of atzmos, gilei lokos, air, the spashtas, all these words, all these inyanim, are inyanim which their mitzias is not me'atzmusam. Nothing has to be. Besides the Eibishter himself, nothing has to be. There doesn't have to be the musik of Gili, there doesn't have to be the musik of Spashtas, Ein Sof, nothing has to be. So air, yeshli, so air for sure has a mugger. Air has a mugger. But in the Tchila also, I added, but air in the Tchila usually means that Mitzusi Me'atzmuseh, and so I've done Kevin Zagan affair the Mitzusi Me'atzmuseh. Air is Nevea Mitzad Ratzna Etzem. So air, yeshli Tchila. So one touch that could be in the tchila means that that in was bashtet the Ein Sof of the that there's no, not only that his Ein Sof bashtet in them, that he's mispashet b'kol mokim, but there's no hagdara to how high and how mufshit and how pshit is the is. In the tchila, that there's no sheer to the depth and the aliyah of the Nicht in the tchila in the sense that the has no mocker, or hotishkin oniv. The has a mocker. Not only has a mocker, he also has a tchila in a certain degree, because he's k'einche mehed. He's not caught mehed. I don't know want to go into these pratim now. But in the tchila, one touch could be in the tchila over here means that there's no, that it's a mitzvah apshitis. Not only that he's a certain inyan which extends itself everywhere, which is bligvul or nimtze b'kol makim, but there's no gvul to the pshitis and to the hafla of the air. That's in the tchila. There's no beginning that you could say that in them bashtet the pshitis, and this pshitis is everywhere. There's no hagbala in the ilui of the air. As that in the tchila. So that's all bringing out that it's amitis apshitis. If it was a certain degree of pshitis, so you can say there's a certain hagbala to the pshitis air, and was bashtet der pshitis that is nimtza b'kol makim, that is bligvul, is mispashet l'matamata. In the tchila saying that it's amitis apshitis, I mean that there's no definition to the ilui of the air. That's I think the pashta taich you say over here, the Rebbe means over here in the tchila. Or we can the taich not zweite taich echet in the tchila. That the Rebbe brings that the Chiddush Samavav, he brings that the Alter Rebbe says in the Kedusha that the air is not only expresses the Ein Sof of Atzmos, but the air also contains within itself the Ein Tchila of Atzmos. Also the fact that Atzmos is Mitzvah Me'atzmosai, that's also Nizgala, and that also is Vertarez gebracht durch the air. But Lomer das Apel is not a Zayt. But in Pashas, in the Tchil is bringing out the ultimate pshittis of the air. Yeah. And the Fizeh, the marker is not, the touch in the Tchil means what I'm saying, that there's no shear to the ilui and the pshittis of the air, then the marker is not in some above. The marker is a maimer lech lecha in aleph, other maimerim. In this hemshan and some above doesn't say that this word, that in the Tchil, that there's no hagbola to the pshittis and the ilui of the air. So the scientists some because they mean this the other technique in the tchila l'chora that the air also brings out the mitzvah me'atzmosai of that. To me vidim adavar azeh, yeah, mit gelernt to vayelach, so that's the okay. Also l'chora bazeh, so since the air is avazis of an amitis ein sof im kain the shaykh be chiluki darges the ma'ila mate kemen doch nur sagen that's all tzir, that's all there's this target, there's that target, the air is ein sof. So the yuvan al pibir rabbein azak bedal hoven in air ein sof shel achrov. Was sagt Alter Rebbe dort in the Maimer Lohaven in Erin Sof? So there he says Erin Sof Nikras Shpas Akech V'Chayis Meni Yisbarich. That means not the etzem, but the etzem the way the etzem comes begili. Hashpas Akech V'Chayis Meni Yisbarich. That means that the Kech V'Chayis the way it comes begili, the way it comes and it's nizgala. Shiyochel Akech Hazel Hachis Elumis Inketz. Vakein Nikra Ein Sof. That's why it's called Ein Sof because it's Yochel Hachis Elumis Inketz means it's just bligvul. The air is bligvul. That's one thing. That's Alter Rebbe's taich that air is Ein Sof. But then the Alter Rebbe says the main part that the Rebbe wants to bring out here is that the Alter Rebbe says there that Nikra air v'li shefa lefi she'ein b'mhusi v'atzmus yisbarach shum shini v'yispailis m'amshach asa or l'hakis kol ha'ilmus k'mo shel eir ha'shemesh v'chein k'shen sham mislaveshes b'aguf v'meil ha'guf na'asechai v'ein etzrichel dis'azik l'hakis ha'guf ha'derech shefa v'chein zeh gam kin moshel eir v'ar they mean the whole lashon moshel eir v'ar. The Nekuda the Rebbe wants to bring out from the Alter Rebbe's word there is why is it called air? The reason why they call them the Mkobalim, call them Hamshachas Elokus, B'lashon Eir and not Shefa. So there's Kama Pratim. They say, why is the Hamshachas Elokus called Eir and not Shefa? So the Pashta beard is because Shefa is that the from B'shas the Rav is Mashpia Seichel to the Talmud, so he's not Mashpia the Seichel Kameshu. He's been samson the Seichel that it should be masim to the tzir of the Makabel. Mashenkin Eir the Shemesh is Mispashet Kameshu. He's not Mishtane to give over his light according to how much the world is able to handle. The behirus, the light, the way it is in the shemesh, that's what's mispashet. So when you say the word what do you want to express the word that is me'ein amar. Using the word shefa would mean that the ashpa is not me'ein mashpia. The ashpa is the echos of the mashpia, the way it's in the mitzumsim the gave. Dovim that is bringing that the is the shefa exactly the way it is by the elyin, or does they better mispashet? They say they're going to get to shemesh that the behirus exactly the way it is by the shemesh does state begilu. But the Alter Rebbe sagt dort in that zweite word why we call it The Gosh exists since, but Alter Rebbe says it there. That the reason why we're calling them Shachal Mal B'Shem and not B'Shem Shefa is because is our audible vav. Mashiach Shefa is a Mahuzdav. No, there's one adgasha in shefa. The chisaron of shefa is that the hashpa is not the way it is by the rabbis mitzumtzum. Mashikin eir is me'ein amar that the behirus the way it is in the shemesh is mispashit. There's another adgasha in eir me'ein amar. If I can't, l'chora chisaron in eir. Shefa has a mile. The shefa is a mahuzdavar. Is not a ha'arab avad. Shefa is that a certain percent of the seichel of the Rav he gives over to the Talmud. Not what the Talmud gets doesn't reflect the entire seichel of the Rav. But that mitzimtzum is a percentage of the seichel of the Rav. It gives the shfas in Gashmi, shfas mayim, that when a little water goes from one place to the next, so there's, even though not the whole water extended itself to the mekabel, but a little water went. And that little water that went is a mahuzdavar. It means a percentage, a little bit of the makir extended itself to the mekabel. That's a Muslim. Shemesh, we say that what the world gets from the shemesh is a arab. What does it mean arab? It's not a percentage of the behirus. There's the light, the way it is by the shemesh, the way it is in the etzem. The behirus, the way it is by etzem. Then there's the behirus, there's the light, the way it is mispashet and meir and vel. The behirus that we get, which is mispashet and meir and vel, there's nothing from the muhus of the shemesh. It's a arab. Means it doesn't contain within itself any similarity or any not similarity is not the right word. There's no percentage of the makir in the oil. So that's what the Rebbe is bringing though. Since we're calling it Ein Sof, even though Ein Sof, it's the same Ein Sof as the makir. What are we saying when we say Ein Sof? The Ein Sof, the way it is in Atzmos, does state beis pashtus. It's not, the Eir is not that the Ein Sof, the pshitas of Elokut, the pshitas of the Etzem, comes in a lower mode, comes with tzimtzum, or it's in a lower target. The same Ein Sof, the way it is in Etzem, does state beis galus. But Le'idach we're saying that the Isgalus is Shalei Be'erach to the Etzem. What's the Hadgosh of when the Alter Rebbe says, why are we calling it Eir? To bring out the Hamshacha together with the fact that it's Me'ein Amar, but why is we called Eir? Because the same way when you get to Eir HaShemesh. The Hashpa is Ein B'min Etzem Klal. So Arda Bavad means it doesn't contain within itself any percentage of the Magir. It's Me'ein Arech to the Magir. So the Rebbe is going to say here, because the Eir is Ha'arda Bavad, therefore, check the seichel look at madrigas and v'yesh hafresh gadol b'neim. That's the yesod of what Milodar is bringing. So this is the Meir and the whole arichis, but this is they bring the whole lashon of the Alter Rebbe there. Where Lamed Zen just says, "Ein b'mutzav atzmusis bar shum shine v'espalus v'amshachas ha'or lahakis kol ha'elumis." There's no shine. It means why do they want to use the word? They want to bring God that usually when the mashpia is mashpia shefa to the mekabel, so there's a shine. The water, first there was a mayim in one place. When the mayim extends itself to the makabel, so now there's missing the makar, a little bit of the water went to the new place. So there's a little bit missing in the original place. And so then there's a shini. Now there's when the Rav is mashpia seichel to the Talmud. So first the seichel Rav was in one oifen. Then he changed the svar in a way that it should be behesim to the meich Talmud. So there's a shini. The seichel kameshu who was according to the meich Rav. Now he had this ibiga arbet and the seichel of the Rav is behesim to the tfisa of the Talmud. So that's a shini. Imitzot is gedar baiten. It's a shini v'espailos. So the reason why we call the amshacham u'mayla b'shem eir is because there's no shini v'espailos me'amshachas ha'ara from the makir. The gilui from the makir is not geir mashina. Commercial eir hashemesh that b'shas the shemesh is meir. The shemesh is not mishtana. It doesn't have to work. It means, on one hand, you're going to say l'chure the light, the way the shemesh, the behirus, the way it is in the shemesh itself, is shalei be'erach, much greater than the behirus, the way we experience it. We'll see that in a minute, but that's the nekuda. It's a l'chure, in order for the behirus to be in a zasert eifen, that people should be able to experience it, it has to be mishtana. L'chure, the shemesh gilach mishtana zayin. Zok menei, the hashpas, ha'orah from the shemesh doesn't have to do, there's no shini v'espailas. The shemesh is not affected, doesn't have to say, there's no change in the behirus, the way it is in the shemesh, the behirus, the way it is in the spashit. And what's the beard? The beard is, what Alter brings here, is because it's ha'ara b'vad. It says, there's no, there's ein tzricha lis asik. This v'lachein is not going on the whole lineage. The Alter is saying here, since the neshama is also the erech so therefore also the guy with the neshama, we could call it erva ha'ara. But the dig what Alter wants to say is, in this mimer, if you look in the mimer, that the reason why it's called er is because the same way the er from the shemesh is ha'ara b'vad, Al derech zeh the er, the diuk er in sof, is that it's a horrible vat from the heads. But the subtitle is on the cheshbon advarim. You see, ba'ini bezeh. Hine mash nikra b'shem er harei loheda she'eni amor. This is what there must be madgish. This does what I say from the Amol commentation of why we being madgish the shem er to bring out the mile of er that it's me'en amor and that it's dov. Verschiedene miles in er. will the Rebbe is bringing a fakerta word. That the reason why it's called Eir Ein Sof is not mitzad the fact that it's made Amor, not mitzad the fact that it's Dovul. That wouldn't explain why in the Eir I have to say Chilukim Adreges Ach Yesh Hafresh Gadol B'Neim. The diuk of the fact that it's called Eir is Laheres, that it's not the Mar, that there's not even a percentage of the Mar. The Hashpah doesn't contain within itself any remnants of the Mashpia. Ki im Eir Shein Yonu Kishmei Ha'ara Bavad. So the Mele the Rebbe get mevayer sein mitzad the Mar can there's not zwei Madreges. Mashegen the minute you say Ha'ara Bavad can shein sein Madreges. Lomit doesn't in the Vedic. It says v'lechein mitzad inin hamor shesham hu amitis inin hayicheles l'shayich lemar l'mayla maylo l'mata mata. It's also a word. We'll skip this. Aber mitzad inin ha'er hari meyese Eir Ein Sof kanal that it's yochel l'sav sfiras inkes but liyese ha'ara v'gilui shayich lemar sham maylo maylo l'mata mata. You see the word. What's the nekuda from the word? The fact that you could call the Eir Ein Sof shtei madreges shav shvat name is because it's a ha'ara b'vad. That's the nekuda was. So there's come a pratim here to be masber. Lomer just bring out this point. You say like this. We say the pashta mashal in the Eir Hashemesh. Why tak is the Eir? You say when they get the seichel Rav Shefa, the Rav Mashpia seichel Famid. You don't say that the svar of the Makabel is a horrible vat from the Rav. It's not a horrible vat. The Rav understands it much deeper. The Talmud understands it in a much more lower eifin. But the lower eifin is abyssal, is a percentage in eichos from the Rav's understanding. It's not, you say, it's there's nothing there from the Rav. Abyssal. Mashiach by Eir Hashemesh, you say that the Eir is a Arab Bavad, doesn't contain within itself anything from the Etzem there. So what's the Amitzat Sheni, you say it's Mein Amar. So the Nekuda is that is a little bit of a Zagim, but the Nekuda is that, let me speak when you get to the Moshe of Eir Hashemesh itself, the Behirus, the way it is in the Shemesh, is Atzmi Zdikim Mitzias. You say just how do you say Bechlal? There's Mechuyev HaMetzias and there's Afshari HaMetzias. Ich will nicht eingehen da eine ganze Idee, but just to bring out the point. There's Mechuyev HaMetzias and Afshari HaMetzias. What's the difference between Mechuyev HaMetzias and Afshari HaMetzias? Very clearly. Afshari HaMetzias means that it doesn't have to be. The Etzem, it doesn't have to be here. And L'Poel Mamish, it exists. So something which L'Poel Mamish exists, it relates. Was besteht the fact that it exists, that it's not here. That it exists. It factually exists. Mechuyev means it's not the fact that its existence is not that it factually exists. He has to be here. It cannot be otherwise. So Azam is certain mahos which must be. So his existence bestätigt in them that he factually is here. He's here much deeper than that. I think the mashal, like saying this mashal. You say that there's a cloud that Siba has to come before Mesubah. The cause has to be before the effect. If it's the Siba for the Mesubah, the Siba is not far the Mesubah. So you say that. So that's. You say a table is here is in the room. So you say, what's the nature of the existence of the table being here? With what does it mean that the table is here? What type of existence is it the table is here? That it's factually here. It doesn't have to be here. He can take it away, no problem. In was besteht the fact that the table exists here, that factually there's a table now in this room. Mashing the fact that a siba comes before a mesubah, it's a factual thing. L'poel mamish, it could have been otherwise. It can say that the siba should be after the mesubah. Factually speaking, the siba came before. It's not factual. It's not as a that's the fact with poel mamish. It cannot be otherwise. It means so this existence, it's a much deeper type of existence. You have something. The fact that he exists here, the whole existence is a chitzeni, is like a practical existence. Mash'ink in something which it cannot be otherwise. So that exists in a whole different life. You versteht das eigentlich? But Lauren does it when he gets to the Eir Hashemesh itself. And this type of mitzvah, this type of mitzvah is a chiluk be'en arech. There's no comparison between something which is factually here and between something that it's not possible for not to be. That's bleakville here. The table here is in a limit. How much existence does it contain? It's a limited existence. You could define how strong its being here is. It's here because someone brought it here, and you could define how strong is this. Vifel echos licht in this existence. Mash'ing in the fact that a siba comes before a mesuviv, there's no limit to how much. It can't be otherwise. It must be this way. So the fact that it is like this is unlimited. It's bleakvul. It's not here in a certain. It's not the fact that it exists such a klal is not something which could be nimdad, and you could be made at how strong is certain things they could last for 10 years, certain things could last for 20 years, and the klal of siva ketum is going to last much more years. It's not. Its existence doesn't begin with the factual fact that it's here. It's mufrich to be otherwise. So the fact its existence is shalei be'erech. It's in a certain degree nicht mugbal. The fact it's the eichos of this existence is ain't safe. If I state the meaning. When you get to the Moed and the Shemesh, you say, how do we experience light? Light is this ability to be able to see. Light doesn't mean the yellow color or anything like that. Light means there's a azam certain mitzias which causes that we're able to see. And really, this mitzias, I mean, this phrase is stated in Furish, as maybe it says this lashon clearly, but the Rebbe would say this, that what's the pshat that when there's light, you're able to see. Because the Nukud of Eir, it's pshitis. Inyani is bittul agdoris, within this pra. Darkness means that each thing is limited in his own mitzias, and there's no contact between one mitzias and the second mitzias. Its mitzias is ba'atzmei, and I'm something else. In order for me to relate to that, so I have to understand it. It has to be masim with my seichel. Eir means that there's an ability to see the thing the way it is, because Eir is an akudah of being mavatal the barriers between things in a certain respect. So let's say Eir is an akudah of pshittas. An akudah of every other mitzvah is a certain seer. There's a table, a bench, a mayach, seichel, midas. Then there's an akudah which in Yani is bittul atzir, bittul mitzvahs, and of pshittas, not definition. And b'meila, there's no barriers, and everybody can see what's going on. Well, that's an akudah of pshittas. But now you have the pshittas the way we experience it. The way we experience it, we know that there's darkness. There's a finster. We're living within the state of tzir. There's chayshach, there's darkness. Eir comes and takes away darkness. Is mevatel the tzir. In the shemesh, there's no concept of tzir. The behiros, the way it's in the shemesh, it's not that in yoni of the eir is that in order to push away light, push away darkness. There is no concept of darkness in the atzmis of the shemesh. There, in Vaz Bashtet, the Behiris, the way it is in the Etzem HaShemesh, there's no tzir in Vaz Bashtet. It's beyond being typesit in a tfisa. Bashtet the meaning. The Behiris, the way it is in the Shemesh, it's not as Pshittis which in Yani is to be mevatel tzir. It's Pshittis the way it is Be'etzem, the way it is B'mhusay. Pshittis the way it is B'mhusay, and Pshittis the way it is Nirgash in a world of Metzias is Be'en Arech. Because you're experiencing the Pshittis the way it is mevatel tzir, and the Pshittis the way it is B'atzmi Yusay. That's beyond hergish. That's beyond tfis. You understand this? So the gilui is a audible vat from the market. You versteht was mir redt, or es geht ein bisschen nicht so glatig. Huh? You understand what I'm saying?
A little over my head.
But the nekuda is that, let's say it in a simple way. There's a concept of light. You say the shemesh is a lashon chassidus, is a behiri be'etzem, behiris atzmis. This light that's in the shemesh is in yoni that there shouldn't be darkness to push away darkness, or it's a zasert light where there's no concept of darkness there. The only reality is light. The behiris, the way it is be'etzem, is the light bashtetish in them that he pushes away darkness. It's a mahus for itself. That light, the way it is a mahus for itself, we experience that light. We don't experience that. We experience light that it's a zach which pushes away darkness. Why do we experience light that way? We're living in a world of chesha. We're not living in a world we're living in a world of mitzias, where there's chesha. So when the eir is nirgash, when the eir comes and it's felt in our terms, so what are we margish? Bittul chesha. So eir which in yani is to be deiche darkness, and eir which in yani is a behiris way is be'etzem. There's no similarity between them. It's ve'en arech. It's a horrible vat. Not because the behiris, it's not a different pshittas. The eir is not a different pshittas than the behiris of the market. But it's a pshittas the way it's nirgash mitzias, the way it comes in an experiential eifin. We should be margish. It's mizgala. If it's mizgala, it's be'en arich to the market, because the market is beyond tfisa. The market is beyond mitzias. The etzem is beyond. The Rebbe is saying here that the reason why the eir is trying to say to madrega is not because the eir is a lower bleak vault than the etzem. The eibisher is ein sof. Amitis ein sof. This amitis ein sof is nizgala in eir. Because if it's nizgala, so then, if it's a audible vat, if it's nizgala already, so it's already be'en arich to the makar. The very fact that it's begilik, because begilik means that the ein sof of the makar is nizgala and it's felt. It's meir. Meir means that it comes in an experience. It comes in a tzir of mitzias. It's mizgilik. It exists. You're able to experience it. If it exists, there's already going to be, we'll see what would be, but there's already shayat to say two madrigas. Not because it's shayat to say two madrigas, because the ein sof of the eir is less than the ein sof of the makar. Not because it's less than the ein sof. It's the same ein sof of the makar being nizgal. But the fact that it's begilui, the fact that it comes in bisgalus, comes in a mitzias, the mele it's ha'arav avad. There's no relation between the gilui and the etzem. You say in Pashtus, this the Rebbe brings here. I'm going into the business of Bechla, but so I'll focus on what it's here. Is only in this Bible. So where's the Rebbe? Let's say when they get to the Rimshel of Shabbat is Gringer. Where's the Rebbe say here? He says, "Mashnika b'shem she'nei amar shen yana yukashmi arav levat lechein." He says, "Mitzad inin hamar shesham hamitis in ha'yichel." What does it mean? Mitzad inin hamar mitzad atzmos, which is a mitis in ha'yichel. What does it mean? Mitis in ha'yichel. The Rebbe is saying the truth is that the true concept of yichel you can only say in atzmos. What does yachal mean? Yachal means that balkeach means that the fact that you're able to do this is because you relate to that. Yachal means he's beyond the tzir of the inyanim which come from it. Because it's not defined, can al zayin. The truth is that any which is not atzmos has a certain definition. Everything has some type of definition. If it's a mitzias, if it exists, you have to, what exists? If it's something which is nirgash, kein mitzias nicht, has no definition at all, then it's not, then it's beyond experience. Then it's beyond tfisa. A mitzias means something that's felt in reality, something it's murgish, it's nizgala. Seda is a mitzias. If seda, the same way you say in the marshal of saying klasi bekedum u'mesubah. Any time you have the factual is the chi of the inyan is higher than gilui. Gilui means that a father is older than the son because the sibah comes before the mesubah. That's a factual thing. The gilui is always v'derzach kum tarap in a mitzias, the way it's experienced. The way it's experienced, so what's being experienced there? What's being nizgala? That for someone episatzir has to be some mitzias. Masha'enkin atzmos is there's no. So the Rebbe is saying that a mitis in ha'yichel you can only say in atzmos. Any which has agdara, so the fact you say something, the eir is pashut. What's the eir is pashut? In Yoni is that he's not defined, and because he's not defined, if he's not ultimately undefined, he has no tzir at all. Amitis ein sof. That's only atzmos. Amitis ein sof. Any which is not atzmos has some type of definition of what it is, what's being experienced, what's being nizgala, what's being mortgaged. If it has a tzir, what it is. So the fact that it's not yachal. Yachal means it has to relate to what comes from it. If it doesn't relate at all, this is kind of happen because it has a certain agdara. If the Eibush is kol yachal, atzmos has no definition at all. He's not bligvul, he's not gvul, he's not shlilas hagvul. So what is it? He's not bligvul, and he's also not bligvul. He's not gvul, he's also not gvul. So that's not any which comes in mitzias. You have to be in something when it's gal in mitzias. So what exists? What's made? What's made has to have a certain taich was made. The Ein Sof, the way it is in Atzmos, has no tzir at all. There's no agdaris at all. So he's the emes yachal. He doesn't relate to anything, but he's not defined that he doesn't relate. His definition is not that he doesn't relate to anything. He has no definition at all. Ken al zayin. He's the mitis in ha'yichelis. But that Ein Sof is taken as gala. The Ein Sof, but when it's gala, the Ein Sof has to have a taich. That mitis, the very fact that it comes into it's nizgala means that it comes into a hergish, it comes into a gilui. If it comes into a gilui, there has to be a taich to this Ein Sof. It cannot be the way it is in the Ma'ir itself. That's it says of Chassidus that the Gabi the difference between the Ein Sof of the Ein Sof of Ma'ir, that's not the Nkodah we're going to see here, but the difference between the Ein Sof of the Ein Sof of Ma'ir is that the Ein Sof of the Etzem is not, it's in Yoni is not Ein Sof. The Eibush in Yoni is not, by you say the fact that the air is Ein Sof, that's its Tayr. If you want to describe the Maila Sa'ir, the Maila of Air Bashtatin then that is not defined. The fact that it's not defined, that's his Inyan. His Inyan is that he's not defined, that he's Mufshit, that he's Pasha. In Atzmos, Zan Inyan is Nish that he's not defined. He's Atzmos, he has no Inyan. The Maila is not defined. The fact that it's Ein Sof, it's not Nish in them Bashtait Zan Maila. In you can't say that there's no definition at all. There's no Inyan of Ein Sof. If there's no Inyan, so nothing exists. That's not Inyan Mitzias. Atzmos is built in Mitzias. The Eibusher's being is not an experiential type of being. If it's an Inyan Mitzias, dafür stop an episode taich. So the Ein Sof of has to have a certain taich. To be vina b'chol sadavar hazeh. Oh, so let me say what the Rebbe said. So he says, so he says. So mainly said, "L'chim inin amor shama midas in ha'yicheles l'shayich lemer l'maylo l'mata." You can't say there's no mala, there's no mata, and there's no neisei. Neisei mela means nicht mugder, but there's no yachas to this inin of that inin. Aval l'shayich lemer shesh nebez madreges. Ask kam l'shayich lemer shesh havish godel v'nei. Aval mitzad inin ha'er ariim hayisei erin sof What does it mean? It means even though the Eir is Ein Sof, that means that the Eir is it's the Ein Sof of the Atzmos. The way it's Mizgala, it's not a different Ein Sof. So the Eir is Taka Ein Sof. Ukenashim Kines Ein Sof Yochel Savas Elam is in Ketz. Ulamayli is Sfiris in Ketz. Mikankim liyesi ha'arda v'gilui, akaponim sheresh ha'makar la'arda v'gilui, b'lvad shayach lemar sham maila matamata. So the lashon that I was saying here is, that's the mashmos, since in Eir it comes begilui. If it comes begilui, so it's what are we saying? There's the Atzmos is Ein Sof, heder agdara b'chlal, can all zayin, but there's no yachas to the things which could be. Mashiach in Eir, when you say that the Eir is Ein Sof, because the Eir is Amid Ein Sof, therefore, let's say you say because he's Ein Sof, he's not defined, there could be Bligvol and there could be Gvol. But what's the pshat? There could be Bligvol and Gvol. Mitzad the fact that the Eir is Ein Sof, therefore there could be Bligvol and Gvol. But that means that it's Meir b'Poyel, that there's an Eir which could be Bligvol and an Eir which could be Gvol. So the Hechel is two in Yon. Since the Eir is the Ein Sof the way it is in Atzmos, was kunt biz galos. So when it comes to Galas, Muzayin, that there's an Indian of Ein Sof. Let's say the two we're dealing with over here is Bligvol and Gvol. So mitzad Atzmos, there is no Bligvol, there's no Gvol. He's nicht mugder klar. It is the way the Indian come begilui. You don't come behergish. If it comes behergish, so there is an there is a mitzias of Bligvol, and there's a mitzias of Gvol. It's a svei madreges. Even though the Eir is Ein Sof, because the Eir is Ein Sof, b'meile hataralz. But hot alts in a mitzias, not in the built mitzias. What's negay here? So one nukud is that therefore the Ein Sof of Eir is not going to be a mitzvah Ein Sof. The Ein Sof the etzem Ein Sof has a certain touch. But what's negay over here is that b'meila the tnuas which are neveh mitzad the pshita Eir, each Indian is an Indian for itself. So if we have this, just to go back to the word of Shtei Mekaymis and Makem Echad, when you say, according to what I was being mevayer till now, that the Nekuda of the Maila Adin Kes Mata Adin Taras Maila Adin Kes is that the fact that the Eir is based almost. I think Maila, the Mata is the fact that it's Begili. Amaret Gili Vehelim, Legabi, who are we speaking about? Gili Vehelim. When you say that there's Eir, we have to understand, let's say in the Mashal, there's the Shemesh has Behirus in a beyond Mitzias the Gaif. Not on Eifed of Mitzias, beyond experience. Pshitas K'may Pshitos, let's say. Then you have the way it's mortgage. Then the way it comes begili. The way, if it's mortgage, so there's episode of Haran. That means there's something exists. Something was Nizgal. It has to be, what's Haran Mitzias is this? If it came begili, there's what, something was Nizgal. And then there's you say that it's Nizgal, it's in Yoni is to be Meir in Eilamis. To Meir in Mitzias. So if in Yoni if the Eir is, Lahar Ba'Eilam, Savade, Eilam is the in Eilam, Helam and Gil are two separate in Yonim. Eir which in Yoni is Lahar Ba'Eilam is also going to be Shaykhas the Ischakos of Tumekem is the Frad. If I state. According to the beer that I was speaking till now, the beer till now Matan Gataz Maladin Kes is not two in Yonim in the Eir the way it is Batzmi Yusuf, in the Eir itself. The Inin Agilim Mitzadatzmi. What's it the Pshat Matan that is Begili Ba'Eilam? What's the Pshat Maladin Kes that is Nelam Ne'Eilam? So we're dealing with the Eir the way he relates to whether he's felt in Eilam is or not. So an Eilam is, it's Svei Bazundar Inyan. Gili V'Helam is two separate Inyan, two separate Mekemis. Whether because it's Begili or because it's not Begili, it's Svei Bazundar Inyan. And even though Mitzad Eir, the fact that it could be Nizgala, the fact that it could be, means, why is it that he has the Matan Kazama? Even according to the beer before, why is it that he has the ability to be Meir and to be Behelim? Because it's Ein Sof. But according to the beer earlier, we're not dealing with the Ein Sof the way it is in its mahos. As a result of the fact that it is Ein Sof, so there's two ways how he relates to Eilamis. So it's the Eir the way it comes in the mizgeres of Eilamis. So Moses having Darden behessen to the Eir, to the place that he's coming to. If the Eir is Meretach out in a Helen Bagili, according to what's inspired till now, is the Eir the way he is in relation to the Zulas, whether the Zulas experiences him or not. Legabe the Zulas, so there's Gila and Helma Sebas in the Reinyan. The Eir the way he comes in a way of being made and Mizgalit. Kalapi the Zulas, it's also going to be two in Yonim, Helen Begila. Tzvei Mekemis Nefrag. Da Retman is the Eir the way he's made in Eilam. Nish das Retman. Meret the Eir the way he is Batzmi Yusuf. So there, it's ain't Inyan Taki. The Eir the way it is Batzmi Yusuf, it's not the Inyan Blikvol. The Inyan Gvol that we're going to deal with is not the whether he's made in Velt or not. what type of relation he has to the Mekabel. In the Eir Ein Sof Kamei Shubatz Miyusei, there's two inyan. So it's in Shaycha Zagen they became Misnefrad. Because in the Eir in itself, in Yoni is Ein Sof. What's in Yoni of the Eir? The Gila of the Ein Sof of the Eibush, the Pshittas of Alakus. But since, even though, so it's not Shaycha to say two Mekem Misnefrad. Two Mekem Misnefrad means that the Gila and the Helim are two separate inyan. It's not a separate inyan. Because the Eibush is Ein Sof, so he has Sai Gila and Sai Helim. According to the beer earlier, you're right that the Yisoid of Gila Helim is Neveah from the fact that the Eir is Ein Sof. But where is this in of Gila? What does it mean, Gila? That he's married in Elamis. What does it mean, Helim? That he's distinct from Elamis. So the Gila and the Helim are two separate things. It's Neveah from the same Nekudah. But the Gilui is not one Indian of the Helim. Because what's the Pshat Gilui? Is the Eir the way he's experienced in Elamis. The way he's experienced in Elamis and Klape Elamis, Gila Helim are two separate Inyanim. So the Eir, the way he comes and he's married in Elamis, is going to be a chilukim between the Gila and the Helim. The way it is in the Eir Guf, we're not dealing with the Eir. The way in Yoni is to be not the way the Eir comes to be married in Veld. Veld is Metzias, a Metzias of Gvul, let's say. And in Veld, Gvul is Indian, and Blik was Atzvete Indian. We're dealing all within the realm of Eir, which in Yoni of Eir is Pshittis. In Yoni of Eir is Ein Sof. So we're not saying the way the Eir Ein Sof is not the way the Ein Sof is married in Veld, in Metzias. We're saying the way the Eir Ein Sof is B'Pshitusa. If you say the Marshal and the Shemesh, you would say, not the way the Behirus is Meir to people, which their reality is darkness. And what's the Pshat Eir being Misalik Chaysha? Before there's a concept of darkness, there's the Behirus HaShemesh, the way it is in the Etzem. And then there's the way he's Begili. The very fact that he's Begili. Gili is already Be'ein Arech to the Etzem. Because the Etzem, the Moir, is Hecher from Get, is Nishke Mitzias. The Moir, the Eibishter is built in Mitzias. His existence, he doesn't exist in an experiential life. He exists better, so now there's certain seers. And there, so dort hat kein seer. Mashink in the Ein Sof. The way it is Begilui, so we're dealing all Ein Sof. Not Ein Sof the way it's made in Mitzias. Das redt man Biz ist. Biz ist der redt man the Ein Sof the way it's made in Welt. Since it's Ein Sof the way it's made in Welt, so even though mitzad the Ein Sof, the Gila and Helam are one Indian, but since we're dealing with the Ein Sof the way it's made in Welt, and in Welt Gila and Helam are two separate Inyanim, so there's two Mekemis Nefradim. Means there's the Eir the way he is in the mode of Gilui, and there's the Eir the way he is in the mode of Helim. Masha'ik Dar Retman, not the way he relates to Mitzias. The Eir Ba'atzman. So Dart, on one hand, you're going to say it's Ein Sof. But L'idach, since the way they come Begilui, so it's Shaykh to say two Madreges, there's Blikvol, there's Gvol, there's, what did I just say? Two Madreges and Hefesh God L'Beneim. But I'm saying, what I'm trying to bring out is, on one hand we say that it's Mokim Echad, and L'idach we say there's two Inyanim Nefradim. There's, in Yechelis there's only one Inyan, Sedod Etzem, which is Ein Sof. In the Maila Lamati spoke till now, what you're dealing with the Eir B'Yachas to Eilemis, there it's two Mekemis Nefradim, Seba Zunter Inyan. Doi das nicht kein Seba Zunter Inyan. It's the same Eir. Since the Eir is Pashut, maybe I'll say it this way, this is make it more clear. I want to bring out just the prat the way it brings in the ACS here, but the general theme of this masbara is that in Eir, when you say Ein Sof, since Eir is a Metzias, so was besteht. In Atzmos, the fact that it is Ein Sof is not because not in Yoni is not Ein Sof. In Yoni is Hedrak Dar Klal. Mashiach in Eir, there it's the Ein Sof the way it's Nizgala, the way it's Murgish. So what's the pshat Ein Sof mitzad Eir? That the Eir is such a Metzias Muflas, Alakus is such a davar mufla that he's not defined. When you say it's such a davar mufla, it's such a great say ultimate being that he has no definition at all. That's a non-definition. That's a Metzias, not a built-in Metzias. That's a Metzias. It means in was besteht sein Meile that he's not defined. And one of the nafkaminas that are going to be is mitzad the Ein Sof of Atzmos. You say mitzad the Shlemos Ein Sof. So you say the famous Avodas Hakodesh that Eir Ein Sof kshesh yesh the keach bebulti bagbul kach yesh the keach bagbul. Sheim toimar that he has no keach bagbul atam chas Shlemos. So what's the beer that the Avodas Hakodesh says? Why is it? What's the problem if you say the Eibush is not going to be keach bagbul? Because then you're giving him a definition. You're chas Shlemos, and the Eibush is ultimate Shlemos. But if you say mitzad this part of the Avodas Hakodesh, if you have an Inyan which is not Meiser Shlemos, a certain quality which is not, it should be because Ein Sof Shlemos they call it. Therefore, there's teddy bears that come from it. It's nicht geschleimos that there should be a Narishkeiten to come from there. It's nicht geschleimos. If the word of Ein Sof is that he's beyond definition, that he's ultimate perfection, So then, in Yonim, which have Shleimus, because he's not defined, that he's the ultimate greatest being, therefore, any quality he could have. Mitzad Atzmos is not the word of Ein Sof, is not that he's the greatest being and therefore he's undefined. You can't even say not defined either. So Kein Zach Nishta. There's only him himself. There's no character, what type of thing exists. There's only him himself. Whatever he wants. If he wants stones flying, there'll be stones flying. If he wants whatever, nothing to do with Shleimus. In Kemen is Zagan Azavar, in Pashtus. Because that's beyond Tfis. What exists? Nothing exists. There's him unattached. Metzias means that something is Nizgal, that something is Murgish means that's a dog of Inyan. So we're saying on one hand, this Me'en Amar, but it's the Ein Sof of the Mar, the way it's Begili. If it's the Ein Sof the way it is Begili, so it's the Ein Sof the way it comes in a factual reality, so to speak. So what's the Pshat Ein Sof? Tzidam Metzias, which is Ein Sof. What's the Pshat this Metzias that's Ein Sof? There's a Metzias which in Yana is Mushit from Gdalim. In Vos Bashet the Metzias, that in Vos, the fact that he's Sof is not, he's undefined. In Yana is that he's such a, his greatness is so great that he's not defined. So therefore he contains any greatness. But mitzad this darga in Yonim which have Milas and Shleimusin are basunter in Yonim. Der Elam versteht die in Yonim, sie mir redt ein bisschen versteht ja, we're saying. I don't know what needs more beer, what doesn't need more beer, weiß nicht. Das ist eine Kode von dem from this verse. So that's the beer that it's both in Yonim. On one hand you say that it's one because the is Taka Ein Sof. But le'idach you say that it's two madrigas. Means in was b'shteit the mile of the that is not defined, and so every quality that the contains relates to the Ein Sof of the Means in was brings Chareis his pshittis that he contains it in himself fashidin enyon, and then brings Chareis and pshittis. In Atzmos you can't say that. In Atzmos you can't say that in was brings Chareis and pshittis that he contains it in himself fashidin enyon. Maybe that was it. It's clear. Okay, so I guess we'll start Siv Gimel the next time. Siv Gimel Shein Nachain. Shein already the beer of what's the pshat in the two inyanim of Ma'ilo Mata. What's the pshat in the two inyanim of Ma'ilo Mata? What's the pshat in two madrigas?